Thank you very much. So welcome everybody. This session is called Tools in the Toolbox, Options for Working Remotely. The nice part about this is if you have now logged into this conference, congratulations, you're already halfway there. I know that for some of us, the idea of working remotely is not new at all. You've been doing this for a long time, and other people, like myself, admittedly, are kind of building the parachute after we've jumped off the cliff. So today we're going to hear from lots of different people of lots of different solutions of how to work remotely, some old ideas, some new ideas, but really just a kind of a mixed bag that we can all pull from what works for them. Before we start, there's a couple of people I want to thank, of course, our sponsors. So if everybody could just give me the virtual applause. You don't even need to mute your microphone while I read these all out. Wave those hands, wave those hands. Pacifica Network, thank you very much. SCMS, Broadcast Equipment Solutions, thank you. Spinitron, of course. Broadcast Tools, don't stop, keep waving. Broadcast Tool and Die, and Max Pixel Art and Design. Thank you, all of you. Also, one last little wave to the person that is making this possible for us here right now, Mary Helen Yates. Thank you. She has a show. She has a show on WXOX called Lady Jam's Juice Box. And she's also just a tech wizard. So the fact that all of this is moving so slowly has nothing to do with me. It's all her. So thank you, Mary. I'm going to now get out of the way and let us kind of go in order. I'll mute myself. And if you don't mind just introducing who you are, we've got kind of a list, right? I'm seeing the first. Yes. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to get out of the way, but just tell us who you are, where you're from, all of that context before you start sharing your ideas, just so we get to know you a little bit better. I know it's not the same as rubbing elbows in the same room, but it's also not rubbing elbows in the same room. Mm-hmm, exactly. All right, take it away.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Tools in the Toolbox, Options for Remote Broadcasting. My name is Stephanie Schubert, and I'm the Operations Coordinator with Pacifica Network. And I am currently talking to you now from Ames, Iowa, right in the middle of the country. Middle of the middle, actually. And I want to say thank you, too, before I get started, to all the team at WXOX/ArtFM. You guys are so great to do this, and it's such a wonderful opportunity to be able to be together. Together. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And it's wonderful to see all the WXOX faces and voices. And Sharon, your opening today was very moving, as well as being able to watch the Radio as Resistance program. I was moved and proud and comforted to be a part of, just to be here with you all today. So thank you. So with that, let's get to it. Let's go. I have note cards. So as we all know, when coronavirus hit, it became a health risk to physically have people in the radio station. And we all had to improvise and learn how to stay connected to do radio and stay connected outside the studio. This presentation is an overview of different tools that we can use to participate in meetings, conduct interviews, and deliver audio files remotely. And furthermore, these tools will be worthwhile even after the pandemic is over. It's just nice to have a toolbox of what you need at any time to be able to diversify how you operate. So I'm going to go to my first slide here. Let's see. Got to do the share screen. And share. Okay. And go to the next one here. Can everyone see my screen here that I put up? Okay, good deal.
Yes.
So in terms of ways to connect, we have quite a few options, and I'm sure everyone out there has developed their own ways. So this might add to your repertoire. We got options for meetings, for interviews, for delivering audio, and We have a lovely panel today who's going to help us go through all of these technologies and strategies. And to save time, we'll introduce each person as we go. And also, before I start, I want you guys to know that I put a link in the chat that will connect you to more information on these technologies. If you find one of these interesting, you can go to our website at Pacifica Network and you can learn more. So, okay. So first up is me, and I'm going to talk about Zoom. And we are all on Zoom right now, so that is great. And I'm sure that many of you are familiar with Zoom. And I know that there's some are not, because just the other day we had someone who did it for the first time. So if this is new for you, this particular one I'm going to talk about is for you. Our story, we've been using Zoom at Pacifica Network for a while. We were doing month-to-month meetings on Zoom. We would have a specific presentation where someone would discuss a certain technology or something that's working for them for programming or whatever the issue of the day was. And what happened when coronavirus hit was everyone was not knowing what to do, right? It's just kind of this, everything's new, how do we handle this? And especially for radio stations who need to be physically in the station and have to find new ways to do things, we just started having weekly meetings instead of monthly meetings. And that helped station managers just talk to each other and, deal with emotions or just strategies or how you're cleaning your station to stay safe. And that was really useful. So I'm really glad that we have Zoom. I found it, I think, and a lot of people in our group have found it very comforting just to have that weekly meeting to go to see people face to face. So I'm gonna go back to my share screen. So Zoom overview. Zoom is a teleconferencing software. It exploded in 2020, as many of you guys probably know, just became really popular. And I think one of the reasons why is the first tier cost available is free. You can sign up for Zoom. You can join a meeting without having to pay anything. You can have one-on-one meetings and unlimited time and not pay anything. You can have up to 100 people and for 40 minutes because Zoom doesn't process video feeds. It redirects the stream to each individual computer, and that's why it can have so many at once. And then of course you can pay if you want more fancy options. If you want to be able to have larger groups for larger amounts of time, you can do that too. And we also have the pro rate, and that's $150 a year. Another thing that's good about it is it's simple to connect. If you've never done it before, many of you probably noticed this today. All you got to do is, get a link in an email, and everything you need is in that email. If you need a password, it's there. And if you don't need a password, you just click on the link, and it's pretty simple. It's also reliable. It works 90% of the time. It's considered more reliable than Google Hangouts or Skype in terms of articles that I've read that people have compared these different platforms. It also has a backup server. So if the first server goes down, your meeting won't be dropped. Okay, now I'm undoing this again.
How long will you be on now?
45 minutes. Do you need me?
Just do me a favor.
What?
I put
Someone has their mic on.
Back on a very, very low.
Okay, so
I'll come back and forth to make
We paid them to turn their microphone on just to remind everybody that there are problems with Zoom. So thank you very much for that hired actor. We appreciate it. It was very convincing. You can mute
And
now.
I'm trying to track down who that is so we can stop it.
So,
Are you
Zoom
talking to
pros
me?
and cons.
What? No.
Oh, Sebastian, I see his name up there. Naughty, naughty. Okay, so pros and cons for Zoom. Pros, Zoom works on everything. PCs, Macs, phones, yada, yada, yada. And again, it doesn't cost to join. Unlimited time. Did I already say that?
Yeah.
I did. Okay, sorry. Cons. I think people are going to discuss better options for sound in the next technologies that you're going to hear after this one. But I mean, this one works. It fits the bill. So, but there are ones that are better. Zoom fatigue is real. There are the social cues can be harder to read on video, and it takes a lot of effort, and that can wear people down, as well as everyone is seen at the same time. And this was more for me personally at the beginning when I started Zoom, and I didn't know people as well. It's kind of unnerving a little bit because you feel like you're performing even though you're not the one talking. But I guess personally, as I've gotten used to it, that part has gone away. But I know some people that does bother. So that is a part of Zoom that is not as great. And then security and privacy issues. There's lots of articles out there that talk about security issues that Zoom has had, especially when it first exploded back in the spring. I don't think they were ready for the sheer amount of people that were going to be using it. And there was a phenomenon called Zoom bombing, where people would have meetings and they would get bombed by random hackers. My understanding now is that they've made that better. And one of the ways they've done that is to have a password option. But it's just something to be aware of. Okay, so now I just want to do a quick little demo to show you what these pictures look like, so you can, just to be aware. So, email. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again. Okay, inbox. I have an email from, where did it go? How can I scroll on a, oh, here we go. Okay, my email's not showing up. Never mind. I'm going to do the next one. Okay, so I'll just explain it. Basically, you get an email, which you all did today, and there's a link in there that you click on. And then there's everything you need is in there, including the password. So, okay, can you see the Zoom screen?
Yes.
How do I move this? So, if I want to get an account and I actually want to make a Zoom meeting for other people, this is what I do. Here's me, here's my profile page. I'm over on the left here. If I go down to meetings, there I have options for a meeting. And I'm going to go over to the right and I'm going to schedule a meeting. And I'm going to say, I'm going to call it ERC Fun. And then I can describe what it is in the next box down there, how long I want it to be, what day I want it to be, and then I just hit save. Now it's all set. There it is. I'll go down to the bottom. Here's a link on the right that says copy invitation. I'll go down here, copy invitation. Now it's on my clipboard, and I can just paste it on an email and send it to whoever I want. So that's that. Okay. I'm running short on time, so I need to go faster. Okay. Basically, you have a mute button, a camera button. Mute button is good for now, like if someone's dog's barking. Camera button is good if you want to take a break from being on screen. Chat box if you have questions or if you want to leave early. Share screen, just like I did, show other things. What I've learned personally is that it's good to have a plan. When we were talking about coronavirus, it was very emotional sometimes, and some people would kind of get on tangents. So we want to respect everyone's time. So what we did was we had 2-minute check-ins just to see how everyone was, and we timed it. So we could everyone was aware that, we need to keep on a schedule. Then we had a topic, and we stuck to it. And you could have a topic ahead of time, or you can decide what the topic is during the meeting. You can record in the cloud or on your computer. And there's also a YouTube way to upload it. And I'll show a YouTube demo on that. I won't do that today in the further information on our webpage. But I do want to show one last thing that's great about Zoom is let's see, I'm going to go to this. That's not what I want. One thing that's great about Zoom is you can turn yourself into a potato. And there's actually a story where a woman accidentally turned herself into a potato, and she was stuck that way the whole meeting. So don't let that happen. But anyway, it's fun. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to my boss, Ursula Ruendenberg, who is going to talk about another faction of Zoom of having meetings locally. And here we go.
Hi, I'm Ursula Ruendenberg, and I'm really happy to be here. This is really very cool to be at this first digital GRC. I'm the Pacifica Network Manager, Pacifica Network Affiliate Network Manager, and I'm also the station manager at KHOI. And get my phone to be quiet. So I'm going to speak real briefly, just a little bit more about how we've ended up using meetings for Zoom here locally. We've been having, at KHOI, some of you may have seen the New York Times article that identified our fair city, Ames, Iowa, as the worst hotspot in the country per capita. So our station is still closed. We've not opened the station due to the high rate of infection in our community. We have 4 people. We have 3 staff people for the KHOI that come in and run the station, and we have another staff person for Pacifica who works here in the office. And Stephanie usually works remotely. It's kind of a rare moment that she's actually here at the station, which is really nice. For us, finding a way to keep connected with the producers was important. It's very stressful for everybody. People miss the station. They miss the studio terribly. They feel, they feel shut out by us. And so we have found with time that it's become important to hold Zoom meetings just to help people exchange ideas, tell each other what they're doing, help each other problem solve. We just actually started this recently, and we didn't think very many people would show up. And in fact, a lot of people showed up. So it clearly hit a nerve with people. So we'll do that once a month. And I'm just trying to emphasize the benefit of using remote conferencing to just keep everybody connected during this time, like everybody else is in the world, right? The other thing I wanted to mention is one kind of experimental thing we did is we actually put a so-called family meeting on the air once a week. And I've had mixed feelings about it. It's been a very interesting and odd experience, but it's once a week. It's called Radio Social. I stole that from the last conference in Rochester. They had a really great venue called Radio Social. Yeah, Eric is showing you their t-shirt. And so we call the show Radio Social, and essentially we just invite everybody who feels somehow connected to the station, whether they're producers, and by now we've got a large number of people who are all over the world. And we get together and talk about what's happening to us during the pandemic. And it's been fascinating. We've had people from China and South America and Europe show up and regularly and kind of tune in and tell us how the world looks from their end. It started with coronavirus. Now it's branched out to other things like, election problems and police violence and other issues. So it's an interesting thing to do. We basically introduced the show on the air as the fourth wall being broken, pulling back the curtain, and kind of just, it's a little bit, I think, related to, like freeform radio. It's just, it's an informal gathering. So it's, sometimes I've wondered it was a good idea, but I think it actually has been a good idea. And it's meant a lot to people. And more people are joining it internationally, which is really interesting to hear what people are experiencing in other parts of the world. So I'm going to move right into the next segue, if that's okay, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next presentation is Joseph?
Yes. Oh,
It's me. No, it's me.
oh, it's you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I just want to say a few words about how we've used Zoom or video conferencing for interviewing people. When the pandemic hit, our first, we were flummoxed like everybody else, like, how are we going to do this? And Zoom was kind of the most obvious thing most obvious tool for us to turn to right away, because it was there and we were already using it, and it's inexpensive. The one thing I wanted to mention is that the version that's $150 a month, that's the version that gives you access to social media streaming. I don't think the free one does. So that's kind of and also the $150 one does not limit the time, the timing of your meetings. So we pay the $150. We think it's worth have to worry about those things. And we've also found that because we're Zooming interviews and shows like Radio Show, that actually streaming them on Facebook has to be a new platform that seems to be working real well. People, the Radio Social show has a social media following where people, make their comments online during the show. And so we found that it has been an effective new platform. And so basically the way we've set it up is we keep a computer installed regularly in the studio. It basically doesn't move. It's a laptop and it sits next to the console. And the console has a plug-in, which is our auxiliary channel, which people used to use to plug in their cell phones or their computers when they were DJing shows. And so we've basically just used that auxiliary plug-in now to plug into the computer to use for the Zoom meetings. And so then it goes right into the console. In terms of the host's voice, the people being interviewed or hosting remotely with the person in the station, they hear it through the air, in other words, through the microphone of the computer itself. And then they also have a computer from the console, a microphone from the console next to them, so that the audio that goes over the air when they speak comes through the microphone, not through Zoom. And we were worried about feedback when we did that, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't seem to interfere with each other. So that's how we keep the sound quality up. So the people in the Zoom meeting, they can hear you through the air, but they don't hear music you play or things like that. So that's a disadvantage of that. Another obvious advantage is not only can we have co-hosts who are at home but we can have a huge amount of flexibility in terms of where our guests are coming from because of the international aspect of the internet. And let me see. I think that's mostly, I mean, it's probably the simplest solution. The disadvantage of it is that the sound quality is variable based on the quality of the internet service that our guests have. And sometimes it freezes up. Some of our guests don't have reliable internet services, and then you kind of have to build that into the sound of the show. It's a COVID-19 sound. We find that our listeners tolerate that because they understand it's the pandemic. But, you know, people freezing up or sound getting a little bit wonky just has become part of the way things sound now. And I think I'm going to hand it over now because I want to keep going. I'm going to hand it off to Joseph McGuire. Joseph, you there?
I am there.
Okay.
Thank you very
yours.
much. I'm at KSVR Mount Vernon, Washington State. And because of Governor Jay Inslee, we're not as bad off as some states. And but KSVR is on a college campus, and therefore we were told to go home in March, and I've been working from home since March. And so everybody else had to go, so I had two jobs. One was to get people back on the air as recorded shows, and one was to produce interviews for my show, Skagit Talks, which is a community interview show. And so I thought about this, and I used the tools of the internet and did searching. Of course, usually it's Google. And also I have connections because I produce a program called Radio Theater Project. And so I knew about Cleanfeed, and I looked at Cleanfeed. And then I decided that Cleanfeed wasn't quite up to the job, as I didn't think Zoom was up to the job for broadcast quality recordings. And so I searched, and I came up with several. The idea that you could look on the internet and you get the top 10 remote podcast interview options, which I'd never heard of before. I mean, let me look at these. And I went, oh, okay. And there were several, but I looked at Squadcast, which I also had heard in some sources that I have in Facebook forums. And I looked into it, and it seemed pretty much like what I wanted to use. And so what was I looking for? What I was looking for was something, well, I wasn't quite sure because this was all new to me, and I was new to Zoom in the sense of what it does. But I noticed, as Ursula said, there was breaking ups. I call it internet artifacting, buzzes, things like that. So when I looked at Squadcast, and I'm not saying Squadcast is the only one that does this, but I looked at Squadcast, and it was the ability to record on each side of the browser. So the person got a personal recording on their computer, and then when you were done with the interview, you would upload it. It would upload it, and it did. There were sites that did it to a Dropbox, that did it to a Google Drive. There were sites that did it like Squadcast. It loaded up to their own cloud storage. And when it loaded up to its own cloud storage, you were kind of safe because, you didn't have to worry about the running out of space because it was pretty unlimited. What they limited to you was how many hours per month. So eventually we got the 10 hours per month for $200 a year. And so if you saw someone stuttering or was freezing, or you were absolutely assured that the recording on their side would be good, even if they were talking and no words were being heard. So this is a web app. Another thing I was kind of new to was web app. Zoom is an application that is stored on your computer. A web app is something that is used in a browser and uses the functions of a browser. I'm not sure how it works, but it works. And so that's one of the strengths, is you don't have to ask people to download an application. But there are some limitations to web apps, unlike Zoom, which you can have 100 people for free or however many. There's a kind of limitation on number of people you should invite, and they allow. And like Squadcast allows 4, most of them allow 4 people. That would be in the vernacular, the podcast host and 3 guests. And so every time you add someone to the mix, you're sort of pushing your resources in your web application and web browser. So for the most cases, though, the web browser of choice for most of these applications is Google Chrome. And as some people may know, Google Chrome is also a resource hog all by itself. So unless you have a pretty good computer, it can be really bad. And what happens is you literally
1 minute left, Joseph.
Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, so the upside is that you have uncompressed WAV files, you have separate tracks, you have, which I think helps editing, and you could interview anyone, anytime. The downside is it can crash because it's overdriven, or your computer, it can be, the interview can have really bad computer microphone or space. You can try to mitigate these with have them use headphones while they're using their computer microphone. That way there's no feedback. And I kind of been experimenting with earbud microphones for smartphones with an 1/8" jack. And do I have time enough just to a brief screen share to see what it looks like?
Yeah, you probably have like 30 seconds left.
Okay, I'll see how the screen sharing works. So when you send them a link, it looks like this. I think everybody sees this page. Anyway, it looks like this. It's just a simple link. You don't have to, you just have to explain to them to go into the Chrome. And what they do is they come in here and this is what they see when they join. And it'll ask for allowing the microphone and camera. And then they have video, even though Squadcast doesn't record the video, just so, as they said, you can adjust your hair, and then you can just join session, and then you'll be in with other people. And so that's how, and they can put their name in there, so when the file is downloaded, it has their name, so you can match it, so you don't have to look for things. Look for people as names of files. So I guess oh, there it is. I'm done.
Thank you, Joseph. And next we have in our group is Lisa Loving. She's going to talk about phone interviews.
Sorry, you caught me by surprise. I'm Lisa. I've spent years and years doing community radio here in Portland, Oregon. First of all, looking at some of these issues, the most important thing I think for people to keep in mind, there's 2 important things. As long as our tools change, what we do stays the same, right? So even though we may or may not know even how to use a Zoom room or anything like that, we're still doing the same things. What we do is fundamentally the same. I actually think it's important to remember that, okay? Also, the second thing I think is most important is there's a word, I want you to write it down, and that word is autodidactic. Be autodidactic. A lot of the platforms and tools we're talking about now won't even be the same a year from now. Autodidactic just means you teach yourself shit. Be ready to teach yourself shit. It's nobody else's job to keep you on the cutting edge of what's happening with the tools. Learn how to use a search engine. Learn how to just play around in the frickin' app store and see what's on there. There's all kinds of things. I was talking with Ani Haynes and Teresa Mitchell here in Portland about this new software called Descript. Have you ever heard of it? Descript it's a platform where you upload your audio, it links to a Word document, and it automatically creates an automatic transcription of your document. You go in there, you check that it's right, and then you can edit your audio by editing the text. And I'm not saying most of the people who are professionals need that, but a lot of times we're trying to onboard new people and we can't even be in the room with them, right? So just stay on the cutting edge. Be prepared to teach yourself about how these things change, right? Okay, about Zoom, I do want to say what's remarkable about it is that you can serve your originating live cast through Patreon, Facebook, or YouTube, right? There are some people who are doing big ass podcasts right now, and they broadcast from Zoom right onto Patreon. Because Patreon, have you ever heard of it? It's a website that helps you monetize what you're doing. And we're not the great capitalists over here, but if you don't figure out how to support yourself, you're not going to be able to do what you do forever, right? I think this is remarkable. You know, we talked about the issues with the broadcast quality of Zoom and some of these other things. There's a difference between, of course, broadcast quality and podcast download quality. And some of the people actually, and this is maybe not your concern right now, but some of the people making a lot of money doing podcasts about whatever the hell are, again, they're originating with Zoom. They're pulling in guests and interviews, and they're serving that to Patreon because Patreon lets them create structure around what they're doing that's interactive. Okay? As journalists, everybody here's a journalist. I don't give a shit what you think about what you're doing. You're a journalist. Pardon my language. This is probably never going to be broadcast. Sorry about that.
No, it's cleared. You can say the word journalist. No problem.
All right. Because God knows we're getting beat up in the street right now. But seriously, as journalists, it's our job to create community. People, we don't think of it like that very often. We're community weavers. We're not just chucking gravel against the side of a damn barn. Okay? For real. So whatever you're doing, you should have a bigger picture. That looks silly when I do this. I can't believe I'm looking at myself doing this. The other piece about Zoom that is a downside, and one of the things that people talk about is that seeing each other can be distracting. For real. You think? Fascinating. I think that's fascinating. And the other thing that nobody really mentioned yet is that when you do Zoom, you do a Zoom interview, that Zoom, you can tick a couple of permissions boxes in your happy Zoom settings, and it creates an automatic MP4. And so all I have to do is say MP4, and you know what the damn quality of it, the thing is. If you're trying to do I know that Ani Haynes and Teresa Mitchell here based in Portland, they're debuting a brand new podcast. I think it's next week. So if they decided, just to take them as an example, not that I'm plugging them or anything, if you wanted to do, you just want it to be podcast quality, people are going to be listening to it on the phones. Zoom is fine, but if you're going to do a broadcast on airwaves and stuff like that, you have to keep in mind what Ursula was saying about COVID sound. Like in my mind, I think of it as audio from the former war zones in the former Yugoslavia, right? When you're doing a bigger broadcast, you're using different tools, they're not going to sound the same. So you're going to have to keep that in mind. And it really is a thing, for real. That Zoom audio is really thin. Thin isn't everything, y'all. Anyway, another tool, and I'm just talking about tools for a second because plenty of other people are talking.
1 minute left.
1 minute left, great. Smartphones are a mixed bag. There's tons of apps about that. So let me jump into, I do want to say live streaming. I'm not sure if anyone, live streaming is not remote broadcast, but where we live in Portland, Oregon, we are the anarchist capital of the nation, apparently, according to the president. And people are trying to figure out a way to tap really immediate breaking audio. So they're using, they're live casting with their phones. Be so careful with that because we're seeing in Portland that people who are live streaming with phones, even if you have it on a stick, you're masked up, whatever, people are becoming magnets for violence, okay? So techniques, I'm gonna do this really fast. Techniques, be aware of whether you live in a two-party consent state or not. We're talking about interviewing, right? You may not even have the right to interview somebody without their knowledge. So I want to be crystal clear. As a courtesy, you're always going to notify your subject when the recording starts. Don't skip that step. Definitely don't forget that, okay? Deep listening. This is something people were talking about. Like, how do you can't be in the room with someone, right? Terry Gross of Fresh Air, she talks about this. Terry Gross is never in the room with the person she interviews. What? For years. So she does this thing, she calls it deep listening. You're just leaning into the damn computer, for real. You're gonna have to do that. You're gonna have to hone your ears. Now I had a couple of articles I was gonna go through. I'm running out of time. I do wanna say, there's this thing, autodidacticism, right? Journaliststoolbox.org, right? They have the JEA, that's the Journalism Educators Association, a guide to conducting remote interviews. I almost cursed again. That's good stuff. Let me share one more place people can go to get more information. The International Journalists Network is fantastic. And they have on their website, ijnet.org, they've got 9 remote interviewing tips for journalists. That stuff is awesome. And the last place I will want to shove you guys to go and pay attention to tools you can use for remote broadcasting when you're doing interviews is BBC, right? The BBC has a hecking College of Journalism on their website. bbc.co.uk/College of Journalism. You can look that up, and that's all I got. I love helping people with projects and big ideas. Definitely reach out and find me if you need help with something. Thanks for giving me the time.
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you so much. And we'll move on to Mark Sophos. He wasn't sure if he was going to be able to be here today, so he made a video. So I will share that now.
Tell them we'll post the links.
Oh yeah, and we will post the links
Lisa just
that have been discussed today. Okay.
My name is Mark Sophos, and I produce Outcasting and related programs covering LGBTQ issues as seen by LGBTQ youth and straight allies. The programs are intended for a general public radio audience. That's me in the back with a group of our youth participants before COVID stopped our studio sessions and made us start recording at home. I'm going to talk in this video about recording interviews where both you and your guests are in your homes. At a minimum, you and your guest need a computer running Chrome. Other browsers may or may not work. A good internet connection, a USB headset, and a free or paid subscription to one of the online services that provides a high-quality audio connection between your computers. You can improve the quality.
You can't mute, Stephanie.
Yeah, we can't hear your audio.
Stephanie, unmute.
Yes, on separate
Sorry.
channels. It's useful because it lets you process the 2 channels. For example, if your guest has air conditioner noise, you can filter it out without degrading your own voice. Once you're done with the processing, you mix it to mono. The second thing is that whenever possible, you should do your original recordings and all production in an uncompressed format like WAV, not in MP3. When you encode into MP3 format, a lot of the audio is just deleted, and multiple MP3 encodings can really degrade the audio. The third thing I want to mention is that you can get fair audio quality with a $30 USB headset from Staples, but your quality can improve a lot if you can invest in a USB microphone. There's some decent USB mics available for $150 or less. You can get either dynamic or condenser mics, but if you're not in a studio quiet room, dynamic mics are more forgiving. You'll want to make sure that your mic has a headphone jack with a feature called zero latency monitoring. This means that when you plug a pair of headphones into the mic, you hear yourself in the headphones with no delay. This is really important because even a small delay can be very distracting. The 2 online services we've used are Cleanfeed.net and Zencastr.com. With both, you can sign up for a free account or a paid professional account for about $20 a month. Both allow you to have a host and multiple guests. Once you sign up for an account, you invite your guest by clicking Connect on Cleanfeed. or invite on Zencastr, and then entering their email address on the screen that appears. The services then sends the guest an email with a link. When the guest opens it in their browser, you're connected. With Cleanfeed, you can record right on the computer in WAV format. But if there are any minor internet glitches, and there almost always are, your guest audio can have short audio breakups that you either have to live with or try to edit out. The second online service is Zencastr.com. The free version can record only in MP3. The paid version lets you record in WAV format. The reason we're using Zencastr at this point is that it makes a local recording of each mic right on the computer itself. So your voice alone gets recorded on your computer, and the guest's voice alone gets recorded on theirs. Because the recording of each mic is made right on that mic's computer, audio dropouts caused by internet glitches aren't in the recordings themselves. And because each computer records only the mic that it's connected to, you can put the files into separate tracks in your editing software and get the benefits of split tracking. At the end of the recording, Zencastr automatically uploads each recording to your Dropbox or Google Drive, and you can download it from there. All the guest has to do after the recording ends is keep the browser tab open until the file upload is complete. You configure the upload information when you're setting up your account. Let me finish with some suggestions. First, as I said, you need to be using at least a USB headset on each end, and preferably a real USB microphone. At Outcasting, our interviews are planned well in advance, so we bought a couple of USB microphones, and we send them, along with a pair of headphones, to the guest via UPS or FedEx. This is the remote kit we send to our guests. If you're going to buy USB mics, be sure to test them with Cleanfeed or Zencastr first. We auditioned a Rode mic we really liked, but it didn't work with Cleanfeed, so we ended up with AudioHijack mics. You'll want to make your room as non-reverberant as possible and try to get the guests to do the same. Bring in blankets, pillows, rugs, anything soft that'll soak up the sound, and minimize noise in any way you can by closing windows, turning off fans, and so forth. You need a fast, solid internet connection for each computer. Wired is best, but if you have to use Wi-Fi, try to get the computer as close to the router as possible. The weaker the internet signal, the greater the chance for glitches in the audio. Also make sure the computers are plugged into the wall, not operating on battery power. It's really important that you not use speakers on either end to hear each other. You don't want the audio coming out of the computer to get picked up by that computer's microphone. Your headphones and those of the guest should be of the closed back type that doesn't let sound leak out. In a pinch, you and the guest could even use earbuds with a mic on the cord and a phone running Chrome. In addition to the recordings made on the computers, I connect a pair of external digital recorders to make backup recordings. Computer recordings can fail, and if that happens, having the backup recordings can save the interview. And finally, this technology works just as well in a studio environment as it does for at-home recording. If you're in a studio, just connect the computer to the studio console in the same way you'd connect a phone coupler. Even at home, you can use a portable USB mixer to get console-like features in a much smaller package. I've gone through this pretty quickly and had to skip a lot of the details. If you want more information, I've posted a more detailed document at wdfh.org/GRC2020. It includes links to Outcasting programs that have been recorded in the studio, as well as over Cleanfeed and Zencastr, so you can get an idea about the quality. And of course, if you're not carrying Outcasting or its related programming and you want to, it's available on Pacifica's audio port, on PRX, and directly from us. If I can be of further help, please email me through the contact page at our website, outcastingmedia.org. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for listening, and have a great GRC.
Okay, thanks, Mark. That was a lovely video. He put a lot of work into that, you guys. And he's here. I did see him show up, so he was able to make it if we have time for questions.
I'm here, yeah. Hi.
And next up, we're going to talk about ways to deliver audio files to the radio station, and we'll start with Davine Dial.
Hey, I'm Davine, and I'm in Asheville, North Carolina, and I am excited about the new paradigm that we are in and how it opens up our community radio stations basically to the world. At WPVM, we have been able to adjust fairly easily to recording using Zoom, like others have mentioned, we do insist that they do the best that they can with their audio with additional mics. And we also send a sheet to any interviewee that gives them tips on how to make themselves sound better. So WPVM we had already been live streaming to social media from our broadcast studio for about 3 years. So a lot of our show hosts, or all of our show hosts who were using that, were able to make the transition fairly easily to doing their interviews with Zoom. And so what happens for us is we have developed a way for them to upload their audio file. As most of you know who have used Zoom, after the interview happens, it downloads an audio and a video file. In our case, they send the audio file to a DropBox that I have set up, but also when their show is going live, they simulcast it on social media so that the video of that interview plays at the same time. So I'm going to switch to sharing screen. So I have 2 ways of getting DropBox files into the system. The first one is the simplest one. And our station is automated. So we have a lot of, the station does not need to have a person in the studio. I can operate our station using Chrome's remote broadcast interface and tap into the computer that controls the station. And so station playlist is how we manage the station, and I can add any program that that someone has sent me so that station playlist picks it up and plays it as scheduled. And we use station playlist, but there are other automation tools too. Station playlist is a paid account, but there are free ones that are very effective also. So this is where I log in remotely to our producer computer, and then I log into my email that's on that computer and see that James Nave has sent me a file. I view the file, I download the file to over here on the upper right hand corner, you see download. So I download that file, that MP3 file and then I capture it, and each of our show hosts have a file that says the name of their show, and that's how our automation finds that file to pick it up. So I add his show to right here to his folder, and then the automation will pick it up. That's number one. We have a more complicated way of doing it that makes it easier on me, because we have a tech person who is very good at writing scripts, and this explains what he did. And this is for more advanced technical people. He wrote in a Perl script, and so what happens there is our hosts send me. I get an announcement from DropBox, from an email announcement that A Better World has added a new file. So what I do is on our DropBox account, we have a station DropBox account, I create a folder for each show. Whenever I create the file, I send them an invitation right here where it says request files. So they don't have to have a DropBox account, I just have to have one. So I send them a request. It contains a URL, and I ask them to bookmark that URL and send each week's file to that URL. And so what happens is they send it, and I go in here whenever I get the announcement, and I change it to exactly the name of the file that the automation is going to pick up.
1 minute left.
And so This is a little more that shows a little bit about the different folders that we have. This is a little more explanatory about the different folders and the way they're set up. But it's very easy, so it means that you don't have to be in the studio and do anything. You can do it remotely. The second method that I use, which, as I said, our tech guy wrote a Perl script about, it only takes me about a minute to make sure that file has been uploaded and titled properly, and then it plays. And so that's it from WPVM. Carry on.
Maybe. And next we'll go to Mark Harris.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. I didn't know if my head microphone or my headset wasn't working, so I'm hoping my laptop will. Right, so I'm Mark Harris. I'm actually manage the IT shop at the Ames Public Library. I provide support for KHOI, which is just down the street. The radio engineer is not doing this. I'm just kind of standing in for him. I provide a lot of desktop and hand holding for a lot of the hosts to get to files. So to be able to talk about what our issue is, here in the middle of Iowa, we have two islands. One is our tower is out in the middle of a cornfield, which we have to remotely or wirelessly send our files to. That's created an issue. And the other is our studio in downtown Ames only has a 3 megabit bandwidth, which is, you might understand if you're in a high bandwidth area, that is like old time modem speeds for moving large files back and forth. So our solutions might seem like hand milking cows compared to some of your people that have high bandwidth, but this is what works for us. So the simplest thing we did is we actually added a Wi-Fi router to point to the outside parking lot so people could drive up with their cars and upload files to our shares on the servers so they could load their programs in that way. That's the simplest thing we did for allowing people to come down. The next thing we did was we created VPN tunnels. In other words, a VPN is a virtual private network, and with an application, and we chose Viscosity, and I'll show you that in a second. If you run that application on your computer and log in, then it's as if you're sitting in a studio so that you can get to file shares, so you can upload or download files to your computer. But again, with our 3 megabit bandwidth and 100 and 200 megabit files, that cause some issues for some people, especially rural hosts that live out in the country. And so thus the parking lot option, or the other option I have to helping people is that I do a remote desktop to a computer that we leave on in the studio all the time. And for that, I use a product called Splashtop. Most people probably heard of things like LogMeIn or that kind of thing, but it's essentially the same kind of technology. We have a service running on that computer, and as long as that computer is on, I can remote in and be as if I'm sitting in the studio and working. And so I support some hosts in that format. And I'm just kind of pushing through here because this is a little bit over some people's choices, but I'm going to bring a screen share up here. I don't know, I've never done this. So even though an IT person, I really don't do that kind of thing. So just simply, if you're in the studio, of course, you're going to see shares where your files are stored, or we use a program called Zara for automation, and that daily updates, or everybody's got their own folder in there. So if you're in the parking lot and you have this mapped, or if you're using VPN, you're going to be able to basically upload files just as if you're sitting at a computer in the studio. So should be, if that doesn't make any sense, you're not using it. But if you do use shares, that will work for you. The other, the VPN software we use, and I'm just going to bring that up here, hopefully, is called Viscosity. It's fairly low cost, $14, gives you 3 licenses, and we have multiple users that are using this. This is the VPN software, easy to configure, and again, when you connect, then you'll be able to see those shares I previously showed you on your computer, and you can just drag and drop files as if you're sitting in the studio itself. The software that I use to remote into a computer and also support is called Splashtop. very low priced option for remote connections. I can connect to host computers. They'll download a little app and give me a 9-digit number, and I can remote into anybody's computer or phone that allows me in and help them, show them how to use software, install the software, configure software. Or we have a computer called Station C in the studio that I can remote in, and as if I'm sitting there, move files back and forth. And it's really as simple as that. We have, I wish our engineer was here, but this kind of, he set up a pretty strong system for remote managing our networks. So we have a lot of different devices that we can remote into and connect and monitor our network. So it's, I don't know how I get out of here. Stop share. There we go. Anything else?
Okay, thanks, Mark.
So next guy can have a little more time. So.
Okay, and we have 2 speakers left. Next up, Eric Blocker, who's also from KHOI.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, I'm here to talk about, well, briefly about remote software that we are using for people who are at home, and it is called Rocket Broadcaster. Let me bring that up in this PowerPoint here. I didn't want to get too fancy here because, well, I really didn't have a lot of time to do this, but Rocket Broadcaster, come on, let's get started here. And here we go. Okay, Rocket Broadcaster, well, remote broadcasting in the age of COVID. And what is Rocket Broadcaster? Well, Rocket Broadcaster allows a person who, like I have one guy at home, his name is Gildy, and he broadcasts show live from home on Friday night. And this is what it looks like. Now, how does it work? I'm going to try to keep it, you know, very simple here due to time, and I don't want to bore people to death here. Now, all you need is a PC or a laptop, a set of headphones, and a microphone. But you also need to download the program at rocketbroadcaster.com in order for this to work. Now, this is my mini setup at home. I have one of 2. There's a pair of, I have a pair of microphones, headphones, that Behringer mixer. It's a 1204 USB that can plug into your laptop or PC, and you can run sound from that. Now, this is how Rocket Broadcaster works at KHOI. I have someone sitting at home, which will connect to the server down in Texas. Hello, Otis. Now, once the person gets connected to the server in Texas, it goes back to our automation system, which is Zara. And Zara will take that audio, run it through the console, and then out to the transmitter to infinity and beyond. And let's see. Now, in order, well, here's the configuration. And sometimes it can get a little bit tricky because, say, if you're using an outside mic, external mic, Windows has a tendency to switch your mic, and I've run into that problem sometimes, and I would have to get the host to manually, you know, once you get that done, then you're pretty much set. And this is the actual configuration. And thank you, Otis, because you're the one that helped me out with this. It connects to an IceCast2 server. You have to put in the host name, which is pacificaservice.org. There's the port number. There's the mount. You don't have to change the username. Just use source and put in the password. Now, once the host does that, I always have him test the system, test the stream. And if all the, if everything checks out green, everything is good. And now we're going to go back to Zara. Now I have to manually set our automation to open up. I guess I would say to open up the port in order for the person that's at the remote location to broadcast. So I have to put in, I have to put in the website, set the hours, and you have to really make sure you have to tell the person on the other end at 8 o'clock, I need you to be there because it's going to open up automatically. I mean, I can monitor it from home, and if something goes wrong, I can take over to start the stream again. But I rather have the host there ready to go, and 100% of the time they are there. And a little quick notes about Rocket Broadcaster. Rocket Broadcaster is a PC-only program. There's a free option, and then there's the Pro that I have at home, which is $59. You can record your show, and it downloads to a folder in your computer. And the neat thing about Rocket Broadcaster, it automatically configures to all your audio sources, your microphone, your headphones, Spotify, and what I use quite a bit is a toy that I picked up from last year's DRC, is the Play It Cartwall. And let's get out of this. All right. And I was going to, if I have time.
1 minute left, Darrick.
1 minute left? Then I won't do that. I was going to show how Rocket, well, here it is here. Can you see that? Let me share this screen here. Not that one. I want to show this one. Now you see how it works right now.
It's still on the PowerPoint. You might have to undo the PowerPoint and then redo the share screen.
Okay. And I just closed it. And all right, can you see that?
See the PowerPoint.
Okay, all right, now I know. Okay, now I know what to do. All right, can you see that one here?
I see you now.
Okay, you see me. Okay, I was just going to show what it looks like and what Rocket Broadcaster does. Say that 10 times in a row. And what it does, and it's a pretty simple program. If you have any questions, you can email me at operations.manager.khoi@gmail.com. gmail.com. And I think that's all I have time for.
Thanks, Eric.
You're welcome.
And we have one more speaker left. We've been lucky to have Darrick Wood from WXOX said he would join us to talk about AudioHijack. So thanks, Darrick.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to be here. Looking at the time, though, I have a radio show called Inside a Question. So I'm a really big fan of questions and interaction. So I think what I'd rather do is just cede the remaining time back to the floor to ask for questions. But what I do want to say to everybody who's signed up for this session, if you came looking for answers to how you're doing things, and right now you're feeling overwhelmed by all the options, I want to remind you, just take a breath and just realize that there's so many options because there's not a single right way to do it. There are tons of solutions out there, and everybody who is on this session is willing to help you, and there's a whole network of people that are willing to help. So all the people, I'm sure that people are going to add their contact information in here. We are all absolutely willing to help with the ways that we're solving our version of this. So yeah, don't give up. And if that's okay, I'll just say AudioHijack is what I use. You can look it up. It's super easy. It's sort of the iPhone of how to manage and route sound. It uses little blocks on the screen. You'll get a link in all the information. You'll see how to use it. But if you have trouble, let me know.
Okay, thanks. We just have a couple minutes left if anyone has a question that they want to pose. I see there's a lot of stuff in the chat, so maybe just unmute yourself and speak up if you have a burning question.
Say.
Okay. Here we go.
Hi, while we wait for somebody to have a question, I just had a comment I wanted to add to the whole discussion about doing interviews, whether it's by Zoom or Cleanfeed. One of the things that we learned pretty quickly is that you have to kind of set some policy around chatter, because the conversations about technology on the air proliferate pretty quickly. And, you know, the most typical one is, can you hear me? And, or are you muted? Or I was muted. And just to try and understand that that's human nature to talk about this, because everybody's kind of struggling or fascinated with this new technology. But you pretty quickly have to set some parameters for people and tell them that saying that you were muted or asking other people if they're muted or commenting that somebody's muted is just not something you want to do very much on the radio, and start making people aware of that. It's a pretty natural thing to happen.
I have a question. My video is, I'm prohibited from sharing my video, but I do have a question for stations that have been successful with their remote broadcasting platforms. One of the issues that we're facing is we've got the technology side of it down, and we have, you know, we've got our encoders of choice, we have our mixers of choice, we have all these prescriptions to prescribe to all of our DJs. The problem that we're facing, though, is inconsistent internet reliability. So are there any hardware or any alternatives that have been explored, as like codecs, anything like that would reinforce a remote broadcast? Or reinforce someone's internet connection? Or is it just, as you stated, that's just the sound of COVID right now?
It's nature of the beast. And if possible, everybody needs to be wired in on Ethernet.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not the person to answer that question, but it has kind of taught me, when possible, if somebody's going to be on the radio for a prolonged period of time, to try and talk to them prior to find out what quality microphone they're dealing with on their computer, or what kind of a room they're in. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, well, I think one of the problems, whether it's the internet or cell phones, is that there's a certain latency that's not there when you're talking to somebody face to face. So it's easy to talk over to people. So you have to give yourself a second to pause or let somebody finish, and people need to learn to finish and not, you know, have that short pause and go on, because someone will think that it's the point where they can interject and then they start talking over each other. So it's that latency issue, whether you have broadband or cell phones, that I think runs into what I hear in interview issues.
Another thing I learned kind of the the hard way, or the somewhat entertaining way, was that with Mark was talking about Cleanfeed, and there's something about Cleanfeed because of the way it works that people don't realize that until they turn off the software in their computer that they are still being recorded or still being heard. And last week I did an interview with a student at Iowa State University about COVID, and I thought it was a fantastic interview and compassionate and empathic. And when the interview ended, she just didn't realize that the computer would continue to, you know, send me the audio until she turned off her computer. And so she turns to somebody in the room and says, well, that was really annoying. So so I'm just saying, you know, just remember that people are hearing you, and you may want to warn people that, you know, until they turn off their software, they will be heard. So I think there's something about this setup that doesn't make that obvious to people. You know, with Zoom, you see the people, but with Cleanfeed, you really don't see anything.
I think we had another question. Was that Joseph?
think our time's up.
Okay. People
Well,
can hear.
Able to unmute and mute yourselves. All the permissions are open now, so you know how to setting if you were waiting on a response.
I just wanted to say briefly that the internet has been slowly moving to a different version, but it was never really set up because of the way packet switching works for audio, so it's always going to have problems. That's all.
And this is Jim down in Austin. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Just a quick thing, the old interviewing skill of, well, that's the way it is, Joe. Dropping the person's name that you're interviewing is a real good indicator of, I'm done with my sentence, back to you. I mean, that's old school. And certainly muting and unmuting is not something you want to hear over FM. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I know we're almost out of time. Can I just thank all of our panelists again, real quick? Just thanks to everybody. I know you put some hard work and some thought into this, and thanks for just being available now, but also being available to help people in the future. So Stephanie and Ursula, thank you so much. It is really good to see your faces again.
I'm going to go crash. I'll be back later.
Joseph, Lisa,
Thanks.
Mark, Daveen,
Yeah.
other Mark Harris, Eric, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
It's really nice having you here. I also want to shout out to our silent help, Mary Helen Yates. Thank you. I see you. I know you. Thank you for all your help behind the scenes.
Thanks, everyone.